there was an option that some could have simply sought a resource consent for the retirement village recovery. Under those provisions. The purpose of the plan change really is to kick the tires on the issues that arise from the proposed urban development. And then I think the conversation a moment ago was, where do you put the subsequent activity threshold? And on the basis of the evidence on the Somerset side, particularly in respect of those traffic measures, the controlled activity standard was found to be suitable, and it also mirrors an existing approach, contextually different, but an existing approach in the plan of a controlled activity for a very similar activity.
Yes. Okay. But given that on that traffic intersection, State Highway 2 intersection, we do have contested expert evidence, we'll come back to what we think is a reasonable future process to deal with that with the right parties in the room. So it comes down to that, I think, on that matter, and we'll hear that obviously this will evolve through us hearing what that might look like.
I acknowledge the competing views on that point.
Okay, great, thanks.
Amendment 5 is the plan contains assessment criteria at chapter 22, so it is appropriate to insert assessment criteria particular to this rule from a structure and format perspective. And Amendment 6.
So sorry, Mr. Lewandowski, before you go off 5, are those assessment criteria applicable to controlled activities or activities that don't meet the controlled threshold and then trigger to restricted discretionary?
In my reading of the plan, sir, how it's approached this, they are applicable to both.
So we've got matters of control.
So I know they're certainly applicable to matters of the controlled activity. I think the way I've read the structure of that plan, and Ms. Barr might be able to help on this point also, that they would apply to both. Matters of, I think, the matters of discretion are ultimately what binds you on your point on your decision making there. Can they be informed by the assessment criteria? It might be case dependent.
Okay. You meant to say matters of control as opposed to matters of discretion. Sorry,
I'm saying this would be applicable to a controlled activity.
Yes.
And in the event that it tipped over into RD,
yes,
they could be useful in your assessment, but that the RD rule talks about the I think forget the framing. Discretion reserved to avoiding, remedying or mitigating any effects deriving from the non-compliance of a particular standard that is not met.
Yeah,
so I think they could be useful contextually, but it would be on a case-by-case basis.
Yes. So if the standard's not met, one of the permitted activity standards is not met for Appendix 16, it goes straight from permitted. We don't get to control, do we? Go straight to RD.
Go straight to RD.
Yeah. Okay. And they're largely bulk and location standards, aren't they? That would trigger that RDA status.
Yes.
Height, setbacks, boundary, landscaping. Yes.
Correct.
Okay. You might cover it later on, but in case you don't, what impact does, I don't want to say compliance, but conformity with Appendix 16 outline development plan have on activity status, if at all?
It doesn't.
Okay. So you don't have to be in accord with the structure plan to be a controlled activity. Okay. Is that something you've thought about? Apart from height, obviously, yeah. I'm thinking more of a spatial distribution of activities and the distinction between the red area and the green area. Yeah, the appendix 16, if I just flip back to it, delineates the green area as retirement village and the red area is residential, but is there anything to enforce that delineation?
Well, a retirement village was proposed outside of that green area. It wouldn't be a controlled activity.
It wouldn't.
Correct.
Why?
Because the rule is particular to the area that's identified on ODP.
Is it particular to the green area?
Correct. So that is
just draw my attention to that because I missed that earlier.
So Rule 553E, within the land identified as residential retirement village development as appendix 16.
Okay. Yes, and that is the notation on the green. I agree. Okay. Is that a controlled activity rule? Standard. Yeah. Okay. So.
Well, that's the gateway into the rule. You can't get to the rule if you're not within that green area.
Yes. But if a retirement village was proposed in the red area, you wouldn't meet that rule, wouldn't you?
Correct. It'd be
fully
discretionary activity.
Fully discretionary.
No, it'd be generally the energy. Hold on, Commissioner.
I guess there's a
subdivision. Discretionary and unrestricted.
Yeah, for subdivision and land use.
Sorry. If a retirement village were proposed in the red,
yes,
it would be discretionary and restricted. Okay. Subdivisions are slightly different base.
Yep. What about the converse? Residential in the green.
It just defers to the residential standard rules.
Okay, so the rule doesn't refer to residential development and as shown on.
Correct.
And that's a mixture of, I think, RDA for subdivision, is it?
Well, it's a point of conjecture between ZTA and the council and myself. A subdivision, by my reading and with reference to the council advice, is that a subdivision of that site would be a discretionary activity, unrestricted.
Oh, unrestricted, okay. And bulk and location permitted subject to compliance with
Correct.
Standards.
Correct. And what you've hit upon, Commissioner, is the fundamental change that has occurred, that is proposed, is to rezone the site to a residential zone. So the baseline are those provisions.
Yeah.
And we're not an overlay per se, but we're seeking a specific provision on top of that for a portion of the site.
Yes. Aside from the delineation of red and green, does this outline development plan perform any other function other than delineating the 14 metre height and the indicative?
It shows the buffer area at the northern end. It shows an access point to the site.
Just using the buffer pointed out the reference to retirement village within the residential retirement village development.
Mm-hmm.
What's the rule connection to ensure that the buffer is provided?
It's a matter of control, the provision of landscaping, screening and open spaces. Yeah. And the reference point is the area identified in the ODP.
Yes. So in that sense, is the 1 to 2 metres just a guide to inform the matter of control?
Correct.
It's not a standard.
It's not a standard, no.
No. I guess all I really want you to think about is whether the outline development plan should play a wider role in assessing applications. For example, it doesn't seem to be, well, it doesn't seem to be a matter of control and it doesn't seem to be referenced in any of the matters, or any of the assessment matters, unless I've missed something.
What's in the assessment matters amendment 5?
Is it?
Matter 3. The extent to which the development is consistent with the
Okay, consistent. Okay, consistent with.
So that speaks to the matter of control around landscaping, taking the most recent example.
Yes.
And you have the ODP delineating the width expectation. Could that be duplicated in a standard? Arguably, is it required? Not necessarily, in my view.
Okay. Okay, thanks for pointing that out. I'd missed that matter of that assessment matter. I guess what I need to hear from Ms. Barr on is whether she shares your view that the assessment matters are applicable to controlled activities also. Okay.
And then lastly,
Just before we do, Megan, you're writing it down for us, aren't you?
Yes. Minutes 6.
yeah, sorry, so I'm just trying to give you an answer to your last point, and I'm just about there. So the assessment criteria introduction. No, it's not helpful in specifying how it's specified. I'm looking at chapter 22.
Is there an equivalent rule for the other retirement
Yes,
village?
there is, and this one was grounded in there.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's just park that.
Sorry, the last amendment 6 is a information requirement. It's been tweaked as a result of the section 42A report. I've covered that in my evidence. That with the exception of the other boundaries, we're happy with the amendments proposed there, and also lists the need for an integrated transport assessment, and we've talked about potential changes that we might highlight to you for you.
Yes.
Tomorrow.
And that was an information link to give third-party involvement.
Exactly. A potential option, and there's a few things that are being considered there. So one of those options would be a change there.
Okay, so you're not opposed to the concept. It's just that you think the wording could be nuanced differently. You've crossed out clause.
In terms of clause 3 of
3.
No, that's a different matter. So that was a suggestion that the first resource consent application, whether for the village or a subdivision, includes structure plan. Now, we don't think that's practical, so that's covered in my evidence commission, and that is the law resident of that division.
Okay.
So that's a separate change. The issue of the record of consultation, outcomes of consultation, that could be tagged to the existing matter 2.
Yes.
Or it could become a separate matter of its own.
Yes. And matter 2 could be expanded also.
Exactly.
In the same way that you expanded it under the controlled activity, matter of control.
Correct. I mean, there's an inherent expectation that an ITA covers a broad swathe of matters related to transport, but if it's useful to be specific, we can certainly do that and what that looks like. The starting point of referencing those same matters in the controlled activity rule could be useful.
Final question, and you've raised, and I should have raised it earlier, is this concept of a structure plan, which has been suggested by the Waka Kotahi experts. Is it? What's your understanding of that? Is it a structure plan per se, or is it a precondition intervention that they are suggesting. And obviously I have to put that question to them.
Yeah.
But I read it as the latter.
It might be a bit of both, sir. A precondition that is recorded on some sort of spatial plan.
Yes.
That is in turn mirrored by, that is in turn mirrored or given effect to the trigger by rules.
Yes. In the district plans that I've seen around the country, and I've been involved on the other side in promoting private plan changes in the South Island, quite often that's written that along the lines that a certain development cannot proceed until such case as X is in place. And that might be a pumping station, it might be a roading intervention, it might be road markings. It could be a number of things, but usually there's a threshold, and it might permit a certain level of development until such stage as, and that threshold might be the nth number of lots. It might be the number of total traffic generations. Sometimes it's a level of service on the adjoining road. I've seen that in a Tasman plan change in relation to a supermarket in Richmond. So that's what I thought the witnesses from the agency were suggesting, albeit they've used the word structure plan. I'm just asking you, was that your understanding?
Yeah, I think I shared it. Yeah.
Yes. And presumably that's what Roman numeral 3 was getting at. It's been crossed out in blue. When it, particularly when it talks about it.
I think that is what that
yes.
Was driving at. Putting aside the fundamental issue of the disagreement of the need for that intervention, my concern here is a practical one, that the way that was suggested can't be achieved.
Yes, is that because, why is that?
Because it's linked to a resource consent, including something in the district plan.
Yes. Is there any certainty in clauses A and B of clause 3?
Is there any
certainty as to what those interventions, the way that clause crossed out clause A is written, does that give any certainty?
No, that's still up for grabs as to what those interventions might be. I guess for me, it fell over at the first level of this cannot practically be achieved because you can't change a district plan for a resource.
Yes, and that amendment 6 is all under the heading of information to be provided with a controlled activity. So information is on landscape plan, an integrated transport assessment, and in the crossed out section, potential interventions. They're not standards, are they? They're requirements to help inform the controlled activity assessment.
Correct.
Okay.
So is that a VIRAS issue really?
Correct.
Daniel?
Correct. So there's a couple of different aspects to it. So there's the practicality that you can't have and VIRAS, as far as you can't have a district plan being amended through a resource consent process. There is separately the question of whether that's a structure plan or comprehensive development plan. There's been case law on the VIRAS of having that as setting up an earlier precondition resource consent process to get that, and so there's that sort of hornet's nest as well.
Yes, yes. Don't want to give you too much homework, but a couple of paragraphs on that.
Certainly.
Because this discussion has obviously gone back and forth, and anything can help us with on that. And I know the general principle, but it could point me to the key cases on that too.
Certainly. Mr. Lewandowski's summary statement that includes some rebuttal includes a reference to that, but we can certainly elaborate with a paragraph or so in our response.
That'd be really helpful.
Yes. I think the Wanaka case springs to mind.
Yes. Yeah.
That also speaks to the district plan's use of future development. Currently, the future development area concept that's in the district plan, the two-stage consenting issue becomes live on that topic. I'll speak to that later on.
Good. Thank you for that, Mr. Lewandowski. That's given me a better understanding of the mechanics of the rules and what might not be changed.
Before I depart, Commissioner McMahon, you asked the question around the objective of the plan change. If you have the plan change request itself, section 7.2.
Okay, page 64. Yes.
In the second paragraph of,
Yes.
of that section.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
And just for context, there, if I can also take you to near at the front 4.3 specifies the reasons for the request. Now, they, I guess, are contextual to the purpose as well.
What page is that?
Sorry, that is page 5.
Yes. Have you explicitly assessed the plan change in a 32 cents against the objective in 7.2, as opposed to assessing it against the objectives in the district plan?
I've considered that the objective of the purpose of the objective of the plan change to rezone the site to a residential zone is appropriately addressed by the sole existing residential objective, i.e. that the existing residential objective is sufficiently broad to accommodate that purpose.
Okay. So sets and subsets.
Sure.
Okay. But you also acknowledge that objective res 1 isn't the only objective, and the objectives.
The request assesses a broader range of existing district plan policies, but that is the sole relevant residential objective.
Thank you. That's good. Thanks for that roadmap.
And I think, Sir, just lastly, your query around development demand. Ironically enough, the only source of info that I know about it for it is the urban growth strategy. So the irony, of course, in your ability to consider it.
Yeah.
Just from a quick nosy, the conclusion there says that page 100, it is estimated that extra land capacity for the development of up to 800 to 1,000 dwellings by 2043 will be required. Council may well have more up-to-date information. I'm not aware of it.
Yeah. I think, Ms. Barr, that's some homework for you.
So on that basis that you'll get another chance later on to grill Mr. Lewandowski, was proposing to now have Mr. Smale give evidence.
I think after that mind-blowing planning discussion between Commissioner McMahon and Mitch, I think it's time to have a break.
Okay.
Because my brain's hurting, and even though I'm a planner, I enjoy having David on my panel to delve down into those things. So look, we'll have a break until 1 o'clock. Before we do, just while I remember it, Megan, obviously the provisions, the suggested provisions are evolving. So I'm aware that, you know, you've made a recommendation against grant, but on the basis that it is granted, you've got some ideas of what should, or some proposals of what should go in. So I think if you can just keep tab with the responders team in terms of the latest versions, when we hear from you on the last day, you'll have an opportunity to come back to us with anything residual that has evolved during the hearing that you still want to put to us on the hypothetical that we do decide to grant. So I think that's the best way of keeping track.
Yes, yeah, and definitely if they are provided in writing as they're updated, that would be helpful.
Yes, yeah, yes.
I think we're very keen for you to be involved on a without prejudice basis in production of what we would call the running dog of standards.
Okay, well, look, that's been very helpful, and thanks for organising it in that way. I think all Dave suggested it, so that's been really good. So we'll talk to Mr. Smale after lunch, 1 o'clock. Sorry, 1:30. We'll be back for that.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
There's a copy of Mr. Smale's.
Great. Somewhere. Yep.